Thank you so much for staying tuned. As promised, we have been joined by Ulysses Slaughter, who is going to give us a little bit of his backstory and then get us caught up with what's been going on. So Ulysses, it is so wonderful to see you again.
It's always good to be here. I feel like I'm here. I have to come give you all an update like every 8 or 9 months.
We
I need to
appreciate
stop
it.
in.
Or even sooner if
Yeah.
you like.
Yeah. The first time we met was back in, I think it was probably February 2012.
Was it?
Somewhere around
Okay.
January, February
Okay.
2012, because it was right before we did the presentation in Chester called Forgiving Our Fathers, Forgiving Ourselves.
Yes.
So it was that particular presentation that I did in Chester with my late father. My father flew in from Chicago, 74 years old. He had never been on an airplane.
Oh, wow.
He flew in from Chicago to do a presentation with me. And that presentation was about our lives for 34 years prior to that. When I was 12 years old, my father shot and killed my mother. I was 12 years old, 1978 Chicago. I was in the house when it happened. I was the lead witness against my father, and for 30 years, more than 30 years, we were estranged. We went 20 years without talking with one another. So as it turned out, in December 2010, I went to kill my father. I learned some things about my father. I found some court documents, and I was determined to kill my father that weekend. I went to see him. And just this, I don't know how to describe it. I always say that it was my mother. My mother saying, be better.
Yeah.
My mother must have shown up somehow. And right after that, my father and I reconnected. It was rough. We wound up on the Dr. Phil show.
Yes.
We wound up putting together a television show for the Oprah Winfrey Network. My father, pardon me?
You were on CNN.
CNN. I was just on CNN a little while ago. I did Dr. Phil's 2000th episode this year as well.
Yes.
But my father flew here in February 2012, met his 6 grandchildren for the first time, went home 2 months later and passed away.
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing. It was amazing. And we had an opportunity to talk about the work that we wanted to do to influence and inspire other people to forgive and reconcile. You know, I make the distinction between forgiving and reconciliation. Forgiving is an act, reconciliation is a process. My father and I were going to begin to work through a process that would reunite us and create a new legacy for our lives. I did not want to have my father leave on the terms that we had been living under for the 34 years that we lived under those terms.
Yeah.
And as it turned out, in the last 18 months of his life, I mean, sometimes I think about it, I can't believe it.
I know.
Last 18 months of his life, he shows up, we show up together.
Yeah.
We go through this incredibly intense and intimate, more intimate than the 30 years preceding. And he passes away. But, you know, I try to be cautious with, you know, terms like murder and kill and pass away.
Sure.
Because the passing away is really not true. There's something that has happened where my father and my mother live within me, and which is why I'm sitting here with you today.
Yeah.
You know, my work is about forgiveness and reconciliation. It was a time in my life where I just knew that my work was going to be about revenge, hate, and all kinds of stuff. Not forgiving certain things.
Right.
That's not my work. My work is around reconciliation and forgiveness. And as it turns out, before my father passed away, you all know I wrote a book called Dear Daddy, I Hate You.
Yes.
Letters to My Mother's Killer. Wrote it in extreme anger, extreme frustration. Before my father passed away, he wrote the foreword to that book.
Yep.
I've decided to take that book out of print. I no longer am going to keep that book in print. I'm working on another book. I actually have a book coming out on audiobookie.com called Forgiveness. And I've decided to start a whole nother line of books. I'm going to keep the first book that I wrote because I think it's important for people to understand where I came from and where other people come from as well. I don't want to fake the funk like I was always, you know, Mr. Happy-Go-Lucky Forgiveness.
Yep.
I want people to understand. I understand hate. I understand revenge. I understand just the depth of pain that a person can feel. I get it. But I also know what it means to go over the arc, to transcend, to surpass, and to get to a place where redemption is real. And I was able to get to that place. And I got to tell you, I mean this. Without you two, without the opportunities to sit and talk with you and talk with other people, I'm not this guy right now. I'm just not. So that you all have made it available 3 times now for me to come and sit with you and your audience. I appreciate it. Deeply appreciate it.
I tell you, Butch, and at home we affectionately call Ulysses Butch. That's his nickname, and he's family, so I feel like we can use your nickname. But when you came to see us, in the moment, I was not on the set during one interview. It was you and Shauna, and I was sitting over there, and I got to tell you, man, as I rode home, I said that is some of the most powerful television I have ever seen on any network. The
That
dynamic
first interview.
and your sincerity and just the rawness of your emotions that you're willing to share with people. That is the gift that you're giving through the pain that you've survived.
It's taken a lot, Michael, for
I'm
me
sure.
to, as they say, fully possess myself of it.
Yeah.
You know, I rejected it for a very long time.
Yeah.
And I've learned that a lot of the times the biggest opponents for some things can become the biggest advocates for it.
Right.
Because I've thought of every angle. You tell me something about forgiving, I had an answer. I had 12 answers for why I shouldn't forgive. I had an answer for everything. Suddenly, I was an advocate for forgiving. So everything that anybody can ask me about not forgiving now, I have an answer for that. And this is where I want to go out. I want to go out on forgiving. I want to go out on the belief that we can forgive everything, and that forgiving isn't just an act. Forgiving should be a lifestyle. It's the way that we live. We wake up every day, we forgive. Everything we forgive, because the more you forgive, the more you live. And as corny as it sounds,
Yeah, it makes
it's
sense.
true.
It makes sense.
It gets you to the next phase. It
makes
gets you
a
to the
lot of
next
sense.
phase of life.
Yeah.
I say you integrate the injuries for innovation. You become something different when you learn how to integrate injuries versus letting them just stick on you.
Right.
You want to bring them in. You want to let them move through you. I say, you know, the prayer of St. Francis is, make me a channel of your peace. Make me a channel of your peace.
Yeah.
Let me go forward with peace.
Right.
What did your father say to you the first time you saw him again?
Very first time I saw him back December 19th of 2010, I remember him coming out.
'Cause you were sitting in your car outside.
I was sitting in my car. I'd asked somebody to go in the house and ask my father to come out. I hadn't seen this guy in 20 years. And he came out, and all I remember, Shauna, is how old he was. I hadn't seen this guy in 20 years, and I'm expecting the 54-year-old to walk out that I had last seen. And when he came hobbling around the corner, and he had a smile, and I knew it was my father, I remember him coming close to me. And before he could get anything out, I just remember putting my hand up and telling him, don't come any closer to me. He got within maybe about 10 or 15 yards of me. And I said, don't come any closer, because I felt myself breaking. I was breaking down. There was no way in the world that I was going to let him touch me, because I knew if he did, that I was going to go into shock, that I was going to, I was imploding. All that facade of hatred was imploding. This dude was my father.
Yeah.
And so I got in the car and I drove away. Got back home, wrote him a letter, and told him, I said, look, if we're going to change this, it's going to have to be a radical change we're going to have to go through. We're going to have to do something to counterbalance the madness that we've dealt with. And, you know, I challenged him on doing a couple of things. And when he said, okay, I'm thinking, this guy is not serious. He doesn't mean he's going to. I told him, I said, you know, I want you to do domestic violence trainings with me from this point on. Whenever I go do one, you're with me. He said, okay. I'm thinking he's lying. No way in the world is he going to do this. I started calling Oprah Winfrey, writing Dr. Phil, writing all these people. And I saw my father on December the 19th, January the 19th of 2011. I'm sitting on stage with Dr. Phil. Sometime in March, I'm out in Los Angeles putting together a documentary series. Sometime in June, after I took my father to my mother's gravesite for the first and only time in his life. My father had never been to my mother's gravesite. I took him there. I come home and I'm getting a call from the Oprah Winfrey Network saying, we want to buy the concept that you came up with. So it was like all of these things that were going on, and they weren't necessarily signs that I had arrived.
Right.
What they were signs of we were now going in the right direction. That this is what people wanted. People didn't want hatred. They didn't want anger. They wanted redemption.
Amen.
And I did too.
Yeah. You know, and it's amazing to me how, you know, it seems like certain things in life, you know, you can't explain why they happen, but, you know, once we, like you said, you bring in the pain. You don't just let it wear it.
Right.
You bring it in and filter it through.
Right.
And then when it comes out, it leads to redemption.
Absolutely.
There's that possibility for even you at home.
That's
as
right.
well. You know, this is not a unique situation. Although Butch is a very unique individual, there's a lot of pain out there that needs to be digested and and processed, you know. And I want to thank you, man, for being at the forefront of leading the effort to highlight, you know, redemption and the process of forgiveness.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You sent me an invitation to like your Facebook page. How
Yes.
else can people get your new book?
They can go to audiobookie.com. It's what we call a cinematic audio book, where you actually hear me lecturing and talking, and then sometimes you hear other people actually just reading my work. But they can go to audiobookie.com and they can order it. It's a really nice cinematic piece where you hear somebody narrate. Excuse me, you hear somebody narrating, and then you hear music in the background. So again, it's audiobookie.com. You can find me at butchslaughter.biz or at the odysseyproject.biz.
Okay.
And anything I can do to help anybody, please. So many people have helped me. Anybody out there that could use my help, please give me a call.
Amen. Thank you, Butch.
Thank
so
you.
much for
Thank you
coming
so much
on.
for having me.
Really
Appreciate it.